Hello, hello. You know what time it is? It's snack time. Actually, more specifically, it is evening time, and I'm craving a little bit of a sweet treat right now. So come hang out with me for a little bit while we get something tasty to eat and satisfy that sweet tooth. Delicious cookies. So, wherever you are, whatever time of day it is for you, why don't you go ahead and find something tasty to eat? It's time to eat. Let's eat together. Actually, I'm gonna throw you over on my stove. I pulled my plant down earlier and it needs watered. Perfect. Okay. Earlier this week, I made these brown butter chocolate chip raspberry cookies, and they turned out absolutely freaking fantastic. And we just finished dinner a little bit ago, but I'm definitely craving something pretty delicious, and so I think now would be a great time to have a cookie, but they're kind of like stuck together. So how do I want to do this? All right, there we go. And two. Perfect. All right, we're gonna go ahead and pop these bad boys in the microwave for just a couple seconds. That's probably good. And we'll get some milk. This is my absolute favorite mug. It was a gift from my mother, and it's got fun little cherries on it, which I don't have it on my phone right now because of the tripod, but it matches my pop socket, which makes me really happy. All right, and we have our... I am going to take you to my front porch. It is another beautiful sunny day here in Ohio, and I think that a little evening porch sitting sounds like a very good idea. Can I manage this? Yes, I can. We are lucky enough to have both a front porch and a back porch. It's kind of actually more like a side porch, but it's really great. All right. Hello, friends. I have my delicious chocolate chip raspberry cookies and my glass of milk, and we're going to share a little sweet treat together while we enjoy the evening. And I'm not actually totally sure what I want to talk about today. I set myself the challenge of making these videos, and to the best of my ability, I'm going to try and make one a week for a year and just kind of like see where that lands me and what that does both for my confidence when speaking about eating disorder recovery and also just kind of for the world and my relationship with myself, my relationship with, for the recovery community. I really want to be involved in it. There's a lot of really cool people out there doing a lot of work that I really admire and respect, and I would like to be a part of that. Anyway, but I set myself the challenge of making these videos every week for a year, but I also set myself the challenge of doing it in a way that feels kind of authentic and true to me. And part of that for me is embracing my spontaneity. I'm going to link the recipe to these cookies because they're absolutely fantastic. But there's a concept, if you've spent any amount of time in the eating disorder recovery community, or honestly, probably in a lot of different just like mental health awareness spaces online, there's a concept about making your or recognizing your traits as assets rather than liabilities. And basically, what that boils down to meaning is that there are things about yourself that made you more predisposed to having whatever mental health thing you're currently struggling with. In my case, it was an eating disorder. There were things about myself that made me more predisposed to having an eating disorder. And some of those were good news. The audio is not crazy, even though my neighbor is mowing his lawn right now, which is totally fair. It's evening in Ohio, so of course someone's going to be out doing yard work. Anyway, the idea of traits as assets and not liabilities is just this idea that even if there are things about yourself that made you maybe slightly more predisposed to having disordered eating, having an eating disorder, struggling with addiction, anything like that, those things are actually something that you can use for yourself and with yourself in order to facilitate your recovery and also just to live a more meaningful life. So one of those things that I've thought about a lot, because it was actually something that gave me a lot of struggle when I was trying to recover, is the idea of spontaneity. And there's a time in my life a couple of years ago when I would have said I'm an extremely impulsive person, which maybe not wouldn't come across necessarily in the typical idea of what you consider someone with an eating disorder. But for me, it was a big part of kind of the need and a need that my eating disorder met that I didn't really have another way of meeting in my life. And that was the idea of I can do things impulsively and kind of on my own whim and engage in behaviors whenever and however I want. And the eating disorder was my outlet for that need. So as I was recovering, I had to find a way to get that need met and to engage in that in a way that obviously wasn't like destructive and full of self-harm and bad ideas that were going to not move my life in a positive direction. So one of the things that I really did was working on identifying myself not as someone who was impulsive, because I remember many times going into therapy and being like, I don't know why I engaged in that behavior. I just did it and I didn't think about it. If you ever had to do behavior chain analysis or BCAs, it's this idea where you have to like look at something that happened, like an event, a behavior that you engaged in, and then you back chain it and you figure out like all of the reasons why you might have done that. And I found those really obnoxious because I was like, I don't know why I did it. I just did it. It was in the spur of the moment and I felt bad and I just engaged in this behavior. And my therapist and I, a couple different therapists actually, had to really work to kind of reframe how I was seeing those things and say like, okay, but there is this deeper part and there is this other part of you that needed something in that moment. And the need was, one of the needs was the idea that I needed to be able to be spontaneous and have a little bit of like excitement in my life. And so part of recovery for me was learning how to be an impulsive and spontaneous person. And so as I've done this YouTube channel and as I'm making these videos, I'm trying to engage in that spontaneous part of myself and just say like, can I just freeform film these videos? So my husband and I just got back from taking our dog out. And it's like, you know what? I really want some cookies and milk and I haven't filmed a video yet this week. I'm just going to go ahead and film it and kind of do it off the cuff and just see what happens. So that's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. It's just like, what are the things about ourselves that our eating disorder might try to really use against us that are actually things we can use to push the needle forward on our recovery or just become kind of the version of ourselves that we want to become. So sort of some of the cliche examples of this might be like, oh, I'm a really anxious person. It's like, or are you just like very detail oriented? Are you, always going to do the right thing? Are you going to make sure that the job gets done well? Or kind of even more cliche and broad strokes would be like, oh, I'm bossy. It's like, are you a leader? I think that's a really powerful reframe that can really help to shift the narrative for people. Because the idea of healing from an eating disorder is not saying, oh, there he is. Hi, buddy. He can't come out here because there's too many cars, but he's so funny. Hysterical. Oh. No. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. So, like, when we're healing from an eating disorder, it's not that we're trying to change everything about ourselves. And it's not that we're trying to take all of the things that really make us who we are and just eradicate them and get rid of them. We're just trying to make sure that we're using them in a way that is actually serving something and is actually going to be, helpful to us in the greater scheme of our life. I'm eating these cookies a lot faster than I've eaten some of the other snacks, which are really good. But it's not good for the timing on my video. Oh well, they're pretty delicious. They're definitely hitting the spot. Yeah. And so I think it's also something that it can be really easy to lose sight of because it can feel like everything about you is wrong or bad. When in reality, it's just like it needs to be channeled in a way that's productive. So, for example, here's a fun example. I have a horse and she's the love of my life. Her name is Faye and she's a 4-year-old. For those who are interested, she's half quarter horse, half warm blood, specifically Westphalian. If that means anything to you, there you go. Anyway, she's the love of my life, which I'm probably not supposed to say because I am married, but everyone knows it. But Faye has kind of a busy beaver brain. She really likes to be doing lots of different things at all times. And sometimes it can be really hard to keep her focused and dialed into a situation, especially as she's gotten older and we've started to raise the criteria on different things that we're doing together, like riding. And so sometimes I get kind of frustrated with that because it's like, dude, I just need you to focus for like a little bit longer here. But because she is such an engaged and curious horse, she's a really brave horse. And I've yet to meet any obstacle or any kind of, new object that she doesn't just immediately love and want to explore and check out. And I love that trait about her. She's super curious and super brave. And ultimately, that's something that I can totally work with and really, really appreciate about her. Um, and it makes the busy beaver part of her brain a little bit easier to handle because it's like, well, I can channel a busy beaver brain and we can work on building duration and different things. But it's a lot harder to build curiosity and bravery in a horse. That's something that they're just kind of born with. You can help ameliorate it a little bit, but for the most part, it's a kind of an innate, or at the very least, it's really nice that she's got such a strong baseline. So if there's something about yourself that you're kind of frustrated by, or you would rather, there's a part of your brain that's like, I would rather this wasn't the case. It is who you are, and it's how your brain is wired. And so there's got to be times when you have to just figure out, how can I use this to maybe look at the things in my life that I really want and what do I value in my life, and how is this going to help me to get those things. So for me, I'm a kind of impulsive person and I make decisions a little bit chaotically. I tend to take on home improvement projects before I'm really prepared or ready to do them, and get really frustrated with them, which is something that I am currently working on, but I'm not always the greatest at. But I think it's like, I don't know if you can recognize that about yourself. I also know that that means that I'm really good at checking things off my to-do list because I'm pretty good at just like getting to it and getting things done. And I like that about myself. It means I can handle a lot in my day-to-day. I have a high capacity and I appreciate that about myself. So it's also just like, sometimes you just gotta take the good with the bad. Or my husband has to live with chaotic DIY renovated projects and someone who, gets a lot done. He suffers, poor man. I actually have already finished my snack, which is great because they were super delicious. But I don't know how much longer I'm gonna sit here and chat while I'm not eating, because I don't know that I really have too terribly much else to say. So I took some clips and some footage of myself making the cookies earlier this week, and also making some really delicious herby rice that I made. So I might just try and edit those clips together, and you guys hear all the pickup trucks driving by. Remember when I said I live in rural Ohio? Yeah, a lot of pickup trucks around here. I might just try and edit those clips together and see if I can't come up with something a little bit different for the rest of this video. I'm kind of curious or toying around with the idea of making more like true vlog style videos for these and having like a couple of sit down moments of eating together and then trying to incorporate pieces from the rest of my life. I really like YouTube. I like the videos that I watch on here. I watch a lot of vloggers. I think they're really fun and they make me feel very connected to other people. A lot of times I like to watch YouTube while I'm cooking and stuff. And so I kind of like the idea of trying to join in on that community. It's a little bit scary, but I think it could be really fun, and I think it could be a really great way of connecting with people. All that being said, for now, I think I'm going to go in and work on a not home renovation, but a DIY project craft that I have going on currently that is not chaotic and not impulsive. I've actually been planning this for a long time. I'm making like a letter board thing for my mom's retirement. So I'll insert some pictures and stuff of that when it's all said and done. And for them, as I leave you, I just want to remind you that you deserve to eat. No matter what happened today, what happened yesterday, or what's going to happen tomorrow, you deserve to be nourished. Your body deserves to be fueled. You're doing a great job, and it is absolutely 100% okay to feed yourself. So, gros bisous, and I'll talk to you later. Hello, editing Katie here. Gonna talk you through some of the baking as we make these absolutely fantastic brown butter chocolate chip raspberry cookies. One thing I really want to point out as I'm going through this is obviously I am using measuring cups and spoons to measure out the ingredients, but I'm not super particular with the way I use those measuring cups. I kind of just scoop the things out and dump them in the bowl. Obviously I know that there's a chemistry to baking, but I'm not here trying to win any baking shows. I'm just trying to make delicious cookies. And so as long as I know that more or less I'm putting in as much as I'm supposed to, I let this be kind of a free-flowing thing. We want our time in the kitchen to feel really fun and expressive. And one of the things that feels really fun to me about making these cookies is that these eggs are actually duck eggs from my best friend's ducks. Apparently duck eggs are really, really good for baking. There's something about the type of egg they are, the way that they're like chemically constructed, that makes them ideal for baking. So it felt kind of fun to get to make cookies with the duck eggs. And then another thing you'll notice is that I really like to have my different ingredients in fun containers. This is just something that adds a little bit more soul and kind of self-expression to the kitchen and baking experience. Some of these were gifts, some of these have been thrifted or just jars that other things came in. I love to reuse like old pasta jars and stuff for this type of thing. And so I think that's just a really easy way that we can make our time in the kitchen feel more cozy and welcoming. Speaking of cozy, you'll probably hear my husband in the background coming downstairs to tell me about the movies that he has selected for our movie night tonight, and I make sure and verify with him that these are cozy movies.
Are they all
I do not like
cozy?
anything too scary or intense, and I'm a big fan of anything and everything cozy, especially for a cookie and pizza night in.
It better be cozy.
Getting all the wet and dry ingredients combined here, adding a little bit of salt. Don't have the salt in a fun container. That might be a little too high entry for me. And then getting everything mixed together. I do have a stand mixer, but I kind of like doing it by hand. There's something really satisfying about that. And then we go ahead and add in the chocolate chips. Again, I don't really measure out the chocolate chips. I actually go ahead and dump in some extra chocolate chips at one point because it just sort of felt like the batter needed a few more. I wanted them to be pretty ooey gooey and chocolate, so decided to make my own little adjustment. And this kind of like playing around in the kitchen is something that I really enjoy doing. Making sure that I know the food I'm making is going to cater to our taste buds and the things that we like, i.e. more chocolate chip to cookie batter ratio. And then dump it in the glass mason jar because aesthetics. Go ahead and add in some of these frozen raspberries. I've never cooked with frozen fruit before, so I was kind of weirded out by this, I'll be honest, but actually it ended up working really, really nicely. And they added a really good tart taste. And then I know people tell you that you shouldn't do this, but I believe in breaking rules in the kitchen. And so I went ahead and tried some of the batter. Turned out really tasty. So felt like sharing that with you guys. And then it was time to divvy up the cookies onto the tray. Again, I don't weigh them out. Obviously want to try and keep them a little bit roughly the same size so that they bake through evenly. But at the same time, I'm not interested in like weighing the batter or doing anything like that because I don't need to know exactly how big each cookie is. They just need to bake and be tasty and delicious. So we ended up getting a couple baking trays out of this round of batter. So that was pretty exciting. I think we ended up with a good fair number of cookies. And it's time to go ahead and pop the cookies in the oven. You are magically hovering above the cookies here. And pop them in the oven for I think maybe like 8 to 10 minutes just to get that initial bake going. And then you pull them out and sprinkle a little bit of salt on top of them, which just really helps that chocolate and raspberry flavor stand out, which I really enjoyed. I'm a huge fan of salty things, especially salty sweet. I like salted caramel quite a lot, so this worked really nicely. And then it's time to pop them back in for the final bake. Don't remember off the top of my head how long this is, but I'll be sure and link the recipe. And then they were done. It didn't take too terribly long. Like I said, got a couple trays and they turned out oh so good.